The dust from the corral rose in thick clouds as Clara Vance broke the mare in less than 15 minutes, something the previous three ranch hands had failed to accomplish in 2 full days. Jackson Oliver watched from the fence rail with his arms crossed over his chest, the August sun beating down on his shoulders while sweat trickled down his spine beneath his cotton shirt. He had inherited the Triple Crown Ranch from his father 6 months ago, and in that time he had learned that running a cattle operation in Nevada during the summer of 1882 required more than good intentions and a family name. Clara swung down from the mare with practiced ease, her boots hitting the packed earth with barely a sound. She wore men's trousers and a faded blue work shirt, her dark auburn hair braided tightly down her back and tucked under a wide-brimmed hat that had seen better days. Jackson found himself staring longer than was proper, not because of any impropriety in her attire, but because he had never seen anyone handle a horse with such natural confidence. She walked toward him with long strides, leading the now docile mare by loose reins. "She will be good for riding now," Clara said, her voice carrying a slight accent he could not quite place. "You just needed to show her who was in charge without breaking her spirit. The others were trying to force her." Jackson nodded slowly, pushing away from the fence. He was 26 years old and had been around horses his entire life, yet this woman who had appeared at his ranch 3 hours ago asking for work had accomplished something he had begun to think impossible. "Where did you learn to handle animals like that?" "My father ran a horse ranch in Colorado before he died. I have been working with them since I was old enough to walk." She handed him the reins and met his gaze directly, her green eyes steady and unwavering. "I can do any work you need. I am stronger than I look, and I do not complain. I do not doubt that after what I just saw." Jackson ran his hand along the mare's neck, feeling the animal's calm heartbeat. "What brings you to Oahe, Nevada?" "It is not exactly a destination most people choose." Clara's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "I needed a fresh start. I heard ranches out here were always looking for good workers. I can ride, rope, brand, mend fences, work cattle, and I know my way around a barn and stable better than most men you will find." Jackson believed every word. The problem was that the other ranch hands would likely have opinions about working alongside a woman, and not all of those opinions would be charitable. Then again, his father had always taught him to judge people by their work, not by circumstances of birth they could not control. "The pay is $30 a month plus room and board, same as everyone else who works here. You would have your own quarters in the small cabin behind the main barn. Work starts at dawn and ends when it is done. Some days that means 14 hours in the saddle." "That is fair." Clara extended her hand like a man would. "When do I start?" Jackson shook her hand, noting the calluses that marked her as someone who had indeed spent years doing hard labor. "You already did. Get yourself settled in that cabin and then meet me at the north pasture. We have 200 head that need moving to higher ground before the water holes dry up completely." Over the next 3 weeks, Clara proved herself in ways that made Jackson's other ranch hands grudgingly accept her presence. She could throw a rope as accurately as his best cowboy, sat a horse for 12 hours without complaint, and never asked for special treatment or consideration. She worked through the brutal August heat when the temperature climbed past 100 degrees, and she was always the first one up in the morning and often the last to turn in at night. Jackson found himself watching her more than he should. It was not just her competence, though, that impressed him deeply. It was the way she moved with purpose, the way she spoke to the horses in low, soothing tones, the way her face lit up with genuine joy when they successfully moved a stubborn bull from one pasture to another. She laughed rarely, but when she did, it was a sound that made something in his chest tighten with an emotion he did not want to examine too closely. They were mending a section of fence along the eastern boundary when she finally told him more about herself. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert landscape in shades of orange and gold. Jackson hammered a post into place while Clara stretched wire between the supports, her gloved hands working with efficient precision. "My mother died when I was 8," she said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "After that, it was just my father and me. He taught me everything he knew about ranching because he said a person should be able to take care of themselves regardless of what society expected." Jackson paused in his work, giving her his full attention. "He sounds like a wise man." "He was." Clara's voice carried a note of sadness that made Jackson want to reach out to her, though he kept his hands to himself. "He died last winter. Pneumonia. The ranch had debts I did not know about, and the bank took everything. I tried to find work in Colorado, but no one would hire me for real ranch work. They offered me positions as a cook or housekeeper, but that is not what I know how to do. Their loss is my gain." Jackson meant it sincerely. "You are the best hand I have, Clara. I know that cannot have been easy for me to say when you first arrived, but it is the truth. This ranch runs smoother with you here." She looked at him then, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with fence mending or cattle. The moment stretched out, filled with possibilities and questions neither of them was quite ready to voice. Then Clara smiled, just a slight curve of her lips, and returned to her work. "Thank you, Jackson. That means more than you might realize." September brought slightly cooler temperatures and the annual cattle drive to market in Carson City. Jackson had been planning this trip for months, and the success of the sale would determine whether the Triple Crown remained solvent for another year. He needed every capable hand for the week-long journey, which meant Clara would be coming along despite the traditional nature of cattle drives being exclusively male endeavors. The night before they were set to depart, Jackson found Clara in the barn checking saddles and gear. She looked up as he approached, her face illuminated by the warm glow of the oil lamp hanging from a hook. "Is everything ready?" she asked. "As ready as it will ever be." Jackson leaned against a support beam, watching her work. "I want you to know that you do not have to come on this drive if you would rather not. Some of the other ranchers might have words to say about a woman riding with us." Clara's hands stilled on the leather she was oiling. "Do you not want me to come?" "That is not what I said at all." Jackson pushed away from the beam, closing the distance between them. "I want you there. You have earned your place. But I also know that people can be cruel, and I do not want you subjected to that if you would rather avoid it." She set down the saddle and turned to face him fully. In the lamplight, her features seemed softer, more vulnerable than he had ever seen them. "Jackson, I have dealt with people's opinions my entire life. If I let that stop me, I would never do anything. Besides, this is my job. I signed on to work this ranch, and that includes the cattle drive. Then we leave at first light." Jackson found himself unable to look away from her face, memorizing the curve of her cheek and the determined set of her jaw. "Clara, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" He hesitated, aware that what he was about to say could change everything between them. But the words had been building inside him for weeks, and he could not hold them back any longer. "Working with you these past weeks has been the best part of my days. Not just because you are good at your job, though you are. It is because of who you are. The way you treat the animals with kindness, the way you never give up on a hard task, the way you smile when you think no one is watching. I find myself looking for excuses to work near you, and I know that is not professional or proper, but it is the truth." Clara's eyes widened slightly, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then she stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "I am glad you said something, because I have been feeling the same way. Every morning I wake up excited for the day because I know I will see you. When you praise my work, it matters more than it should. When you ride beside me, I feel safer than I have felt since my father died. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude for the job, but it is more than that." Jackson reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to step back and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and she leaned into the touch. This complicates things, he said softly. Everything worth having is complicated. Clara's hand came up to cover his, pressing it more firmly against her face. But if you are willing to try, so am I. He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that sent warmth flooding through his entire body. She responded immediately, her free hand gripping his shirt as she pulled him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and desperate, as though they were both trying to make up for weeks of restraint in a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. We should probably talk about what this means, he said, though he made no move to step away. Clara laughed softly, the sound sending pleasant shivers down his spine. We will have plenty of time to talk on the drive. For now, this is enough. Knowing that you feel the same way I do is enough. The cattle drive proved to be exactly as challenging as Jackson had anticipated. They left the Triple Crown Ranch with 250 head of cattle, 4 ranch hands in addition to Clara, and a chuck wagon driven by an older man named Pete who had been cooking for drives since before Jackson was born. The first 2 days passed without incident, the cattle moving well and the weather holding fair. Clara rode with confidence and skill, earning grudging respect from the other hands who had initially been skeptical about her presence. On the 3rd day, they encountered another outfit moving cattle east. The trail boss, a grizzled man named Carson, rode over to exchange information about water sources and trail conditions. His eyes narrowed when he saw Clara riding flank. "You bringing women on the drive now, Oliver?" Jackson kept his voice level and polite. "I bring good workers. Miss Vance is the best hand I have." Carson snorted derisively. "A woman has no place on a cattle drive. It is bad luck, for one thing. For another, she cannot possibly do the work as well as a man." Before Jackson could respond, one of Carson's steers broke away from the herd, spooked by something only it could see. The animal charged directly toward the chuck wagon, and Pete scrambled to get out of the way. Clara reacted instantly, spurring her horse into a gallop and cutting off the steer's path. She roped the animal with one clean throw, dallied the rope around her saddle horn, and brought the steer to a halt before it could do any damage. She then calmly led it back to Carson's herd, handed the rope to one of his surprised cowboys, and rode back to her position without a word. Carson stared after her for a long moment, then looked at Jackson. "I will be damned." "She is that good every day," Jackson said, with unmistakable pride in his voice. "Now, about those water sources." That night around the campfire, Clara sat beside Jackson while the other men talked and joked. She leaned close enough that her shoulder brushed his, and he felt the contact like an electric current. "Thank you for defending me to that man," she said quietly. "I did not need to defend you. You proved yourself quite well on your own." Jackson kept his voice low, aware of the listening ears around them, even if the men were pretending not to pay attention. "But I will always stand up for you, Clara. You should know that." "I do know that. It is one of the many reasons I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with significance. Jackson turned to look at her fully, seeing the truth written plainly on her face. "I am already in love with you," he said. "I think I have been since the day you broke that mare." Her smile was radiant even in the flickering firelight. "Then we are both fools, falling in love on a cattle drive in the middle of the Nevada desert. The best kind of fools." Jackson wanted desperately to kiss her, but he was acutely aware of their audience. Instead, he took her hand and laced their fingers together, a simple gesture that nevertheless felt monumental. "When we get back to the ranch, I want to court you properly, with walks and dinners and all the things people do when they are courting." "I would like that." Clara squeezed his hand. "Though I will warn you, I am not very good at being a proper lady. I much prefer working cattle to sitting in parlors." "Good, because I prefer working cattle to sitting in parlors as well. We will be improper together." The rest of the drive passed smoothly, and they reached Carson City without losing a single head of cattle. The sale went better than Jackson had dared hope, with buyers competing for his well-bred stock. He returned to the ranch with enough money to not only pay off his debts, but also make some much-needed improvements to the property. More importantly, he returned with absolute certainty about what he wanted for his future. The night they arrived back at the Triple Crown, Jackson asked Clara to walk with him after supper. They strolled through the evening coolness, the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. He led her to a spot overlooking the ranch where they could see the house and barns lit by lamplight below. "My father built this ranch from nothing," Jackson said. "He spent 40 years turning it into something successful and sustainable. When he died and left it to me, I was terrified I would fail him, that I would lose everything he had worked for." "You have not failed him," Clara said firmly. "The ranch is thriving. It is thriving because of you." Jackson turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Clara, these past months have shown me what was missing from my life. It was not just a good ranch hand, it was a partner, someone who understands this life and loves it the way I do, someone who is not afraid of hard work and who treats people and animals with equal kindness, someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to be better." Clara's breath caught. "Jackson, what are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. I am saying that I want you by my side, not just as my employee, but as my equal in every way. I am saying that I know it is fast, and we have only known each other for a few months, but I am more certain of this than I have ever been certain of anything." He released one of her hands to pull a small velvet box from his pocket. Opening it revealed a simple gold band with a single small diamond. "This was my grandmother's ring. My father gave it to my mother when he proposed, and she gave it to me before she died. Clara Vance, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears streamed down Clara's face as she looked from the ring to his face and back again. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Jackson, I will marry you. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and passion he had been holding back. She responded with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck as she pressed herself against him. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and grinning like fools. "When do you want to get married?" Clara asked, still staring at the ring on her finger as though she could not quite believe it was real. "As soon as possible." Jackson kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "Unless you want a big wedding with lots of guests and planning. I will give you whatever you want." Clara shook her head. "I do not need a big wedding. I just need you. We could go to the church in town this weekend if the minister is available." "This weekend it is, then." Jackson held her close, feeling more content than he could ever remember being. "I love you, Clara. Thank you for taking a chance on this ranch and on me. Thank you for seeing me as more than just a woman trying to do a man's job. Thank you for treating me as an equal. That means everything to me." They were married the following Saturday in a simple ceremony at the small church in Oahe. The ranch hands attended, as did a few neighboring ranchers and townspeople who had come to respect Clara's work ethic and skill. She wore a simple cream-colored dress she had purchased from the general store, and Jackson wore his best suit. Pete stood up as his best man, and the wife of a neighboring rancher stood up for Clara. The minister spoke about partnership and mutual respect, about two people joining their lives together in the sight of God. When it came time for Jackson to say his vows, his voice was steady and strong. "Clara, I promise to love you and honor you all the days of my life. I promise to treat you as my equal partner in all things. I promise to support your dreams and work beside you to build our future together. I promise that our ranch will always be a place where your skills and abilities are valued and celebrated. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and I am humbled and grateful that you have chosen to share your life with me." Clara's voice shook slightly with emotion as she spoke her vows. "Jackson, I promise to love you with everything I am. I promise to work beside you through good times and hard times. I promise to be honest with you always, to challenge you when you need it, and to support you when you doubt yourself. You gave me a chance when no one else would, and you saw me for who I truly am. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that your faith in me was not misplaced. I love you with all my heart. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Jackson kissed his bride to applause and cheers from the assembled guests. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with Pete cooking up an enormous feast and several neighbors contributing food and drink. Music was played, and people danced in the yard as the sun set over the Nevada desert. Jackson and Clara moved through the crowd together, accepting congratulations and well wishes, but Jackson was counting the minutes until they could be alone. Finally, as the party began to wind down, they slipped away to the main house. Jackson had spent the previous week making improvements to the master bedroom, installing new curtains and purchasing a new quilt for the bed. He wanted everything to be perfect for their wedding night. Clara looked around the room with wide eyes. Jackson, you did not have to do all this. I wanted to. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. I wanted you to know that this is your home now. Not just the ranch, but this house, this room. Everything I have is yours. She turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. You are all I need. The rest is just decoration. Then she kissed him, and Jackson forgot about everything except the woman in his arms. They made love for the first time that night, a tender and passionate joining that left them both breathless and clinging to each other. Afterward, Clara lay with her head on Jackson's chest, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his skin. I never thought I could be this happy, she murmured. After my father died and I lost the ranch, I thought the best I could hope for was survival. I never dreamed I would find love and partnership and a real home. Jackson stroked her hair, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. I never thought I would find someone who understood this life the way you do. Most women would not want to spend their days working cattle and mending fences. Then it is good you did not marry most women. Clara propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. I want to be clear about something. Jackson, I do not expect my role to change now that we are married. I still want to work the ranch beside you. I still want to be involved in every aspect of the operation. I would not have it any other way. Jackson pulled her down for another kiss. You are my partner in every sense of the word. We will run this ranch together, making decisions together. Your voice matters as much as mine. Clara's smile was brilliant. You really are the perfect man for me. The first year of their marriage was both challenging and rewarding. They worked side by side every day, building the Triple Crown into one of the most successful ranches in the region. Clara's expertise with horses became legendary, and people began bringing their difficult animals to her for training. Jackson handled the business side of the operation, while Clara managed the day-to-day ranch work, and together, they made an unbeatable team. They faced their share of difficulties. There were neighboring ranchers who disapproved of a woman doing ranch work and who made their opinions known at every opportunity. There were financial challenges when a hard winter killed several head of cattle. There were long, exhausting days when the work seemed endless and the problems insurmountable. But through it all, Jackson and Clara faced everything together, drawing strength from their love and their shared commitment to making their ranch succeed. In the spring of 1884, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She told Jackson one evening after supper, her hand resting on her still flat stomach and her eyes searching his face anxiously. I know we have not talked much about children. If you are not ready, I understand. Jackson crossed the room in 3 long strides and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed breathlessly. Not ready! Clara, this is wonderful news. We are going to have a baby. You are happy? She asked, even though his reaction made the answer obvious. I am beyond happy. I am ecstatic. He set her down gently, suddenly afraid he had been too rough. "We are going to be parents. You are going to be a mother. I cannot think of anything more perfect." Clara's expression turned serious. "I want to keep working as long as I can. I know some people will think I should retire to the house and rest, but I will go mad if I have to sit still for months." "Then you will keep working." Jackson took her hands, squeezing gently. "But you will also promise me that you will not take unnecessary risks. No breaking wild horses or handling the aggressive bulls. We can adjust your duties to keep both you and the baby safe." "That is fair." Clara leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "I am a little scared, Jackson. My mother died when I was young, and I do not remember much about her. I do not know how to be a mother, and I do not know how to be a father. We will figure it out together, just like we have figured out everything else." He kissed the top of her head. "Our child is going to be so lucky to have you as a mother. You are strong and capable, and kind, and loving. What more could a child need?" Throughout her pregnancy, Clara continued to work on the ranch, though she did scale back her activities as Jackson had requested. She focused on training horses, managing supplies, and handling the ranch's bookkeeping. Jackson found himself hovering over her more than she liked, constantly asking if she needed anything or if she was feeling all right. She tolerated his concern with good-natured patience, understanding that it came from a place of love. Their son was born on a cold November evening during the first snowfall of the season. The birth was long and difficult, and Jackson paced the hallway outside their bedroom for hours while the doctor and a midwife attended to Clara. When he finally heard his son's first cry, he nearly collapsed with relief. The midwife emerged a few minutes later, smiling broadly. "You have a healthy baby boy, Mr. Oliver, and your wife is doing fine. She is asking for you." Jackson entered the bedroom to find Clara propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. She looked up as he approached, and the expression on her face was one of pure joy. "Come meet your son." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. His son had a shock of dark hair and features that were a perfect blend of both parents. "He is perfect," Jackson whispered, afraid to speak too loudly. "He looks just like you." "He has your nose." Clara shifted the baby so Jackson could hold him. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, but had never quite settled on one. Now looking at his son, Jackson knew exactly what felt right. "What about Daniel? Daniel James Oliver. Daniel was my father's middle name." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect. Daniel James Oliver. Welcome to the world, little one." Becoming parents changed their lives in ways both expected and unexpected. Daniel was a fussy baby who did not sleep well, and many nights found Jackson and Clara taking turns walking the floor with him, singing lullabies and offering comfort. Clara proved to be a natural mother, handling their son with the same confident competence she brought to everything else. She nursed him while reviewing ranch accounts, rocked him while discussing plans with the ranch hands, and somehow managed to keep the household running smoothly despite the exhaustion that came with caring for an infant. Jackson was constantly amazed by her strength. He had always known she was capable, but watching her balance motherhood with ranch management gave him a whole new level of respect for her abilities. 6 weeks after Daniel's birth, she was back to doing light ranch work, though she still avoided the most strenuous tasks. She wore Daniel in a sling against her chest while she worked, and the baby seemed to enjoy being outside in the fresh air. "You are remarkable, do you know that?" Jackson said one afternoon as he watched her organize the tack room with their son sleeping peacefully against her. Clara looked up from the bridle she was mending. "Why do you say that?" "Because most women would be content to stay in the house with the baby, but you are out here managing the ranch, being a mother, and doing it all without complaint. I do not know how you do it. I do it because I love this life and I love our family." She set down the bridle and crossed to where he stood, rising up on her toes to kiss him. Besides, I have an excellent partner who does half the work. I could not manage any of this without you. As Daniel grew from an infant into a toddler, he developed his mother's fierce independence and his father's easy smile. He took his first steps in the barn, much to Clara's delight, and his first word was horse. By the time he was 3 years old, he was already following his parents around the ranch, asking endless questions and trying to help with every task. In the spring of 1887, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This time she told Jackson while they were out riding the property line, checking fences. She brought her horse to a stop and gave him a smile that was equal parts excited and nervous. "I have news." Jackson pulled up beside her. "Good news or bad news? That depends on your perspective." She paused dramatically. "We are going to have another baby." Jackson let out a whoop of joy that startled both horses. "That is definitely good news. Daniel is going to be a big brother. I hope he is ready." Clara's hand moved to her stomach in an unconscious protective gesture. "He has been the center of attention for 3 years. This will be an adjustment for him." "He will be fine. He is a good kid." Jackson leaned over in his saddle to kiss her. "How are you feeling? Are you sick like last time?" "A little queasy in the mornings, but nothing I cannot handle." She grinned at him. "I am tougher than I look, remember? I never forget that for a moment." Their daughter was born in December of that year, during a cold snap that froze the water troughs and turned the ranch into a winter wonderland. The birth was much easier than Daniel's had been, and within hours Clara was sitting up and nursing the baby while accepting visitors. Daniel climbed carefully onto the bed to meet his new sister, his eyes wide with wonder. "She's so small," he whispered. "You were this small once," Clara told him gently. "Her name is Emma, Emma Rose Oliver. Would you like to touch her hand?" Daniel reached out with one chubby finger and brushed it against his sister's tiny hand. Emma's fingers closed reflexively around his, and Daniel's face lit up with a smile. "She likes me." "She loves you already," Jackson said, ruffling his son's hair. "You are going to be the best big brother." And Daniel was exactly that. He took his role seriously, always wanting to help with Emma's care. He would fetch clean diapers, sing to her when she cried, and proudly show her off to the ranch hands who stopped by the house. Emma, for her part, adored her brother, her face lighting up whenever he entered the room. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch continued to prosper, now recognized as one of the premier cattle operations in Nevada. Jackson and Clara's reputation for fair dealing and quality stock brought buyers from across the region. They hired additional hands as the operation grew, and Clara personally trained each new employee, ensuring they understood that the Triple Crown was a place where hard work and skill mattered more than gender or background. One evening in the summer of 1890, after the children were asleep, Jackson and Clara sat on the porch of the main house watching the sun set over the desert. 8 years had passed since that day Clara had first ridden onto the ranch asking for work. Jackson reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Regret what?" "Any of it. Leaving Colorado, coming here, marrying me, choosing this life." Clara was quiet for a long moment, and Jackson wondered if he had made a mistake asking. Then she squeezed his hand and turned to look at him, and the expression on her face was one of absolute certainty. "I do not regret a single moment. Jackson, this life we have built together is more than I ever dreamed possible. We have a successful ranch, 2 beautiful children, and a love that grows stronger every day. How could I possibly regret any of that? Sometimes I worry that you gave up too much, that you wanted more adventure or excitement than life on a ranch can provide. This ranch is my adventure. Every day brings new challenges and new rewards. I get to work with animals I love, raise my children in the open air, and build something lasting with the man I love." She shifted in her chair to face him more fully. You gave me a chance when no one else would, Jackson. You saw past what society said I should be and recognized what I could do. You treated me as an equal from the very beginning, paying me the same wage as the men and never asking me to be less than I am. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? Jackson brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. You earned everything you got through your own skill and hard work. I just had the good sense to recognize it. We recognized something in each other. Clara's voice was soft but firm. That very first day when I broke that mare and you offered me the job at equal pay, I knew you were different. I knew you were someone special. I think I started falling in love with you right then, even though I would not admit it for weeks. I definitely started falling for you that day. Jackson pulled her from her chair into his lap, not caring that they were visible to anyone who might walk by. Watching you with that horse, seeing your confidence and skill, I knew my life had just changed. I just did not know how much. Clara wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him thoroughly. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with love and happiness. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that we will always be honest with each other, that we will always face challenges together, and that we will never take this love for granted. I promise. Jackson held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. I love you, Clara Oliver. More today than yesterday, and more tomorrow than today. I love you too, Jackson Oliver. Thank you for giving me a home, a family, and a partnership beyond anything I could have imagined. They sat together on the porch as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, wrapped in each other's arms and perfectly content. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully. Around them, the ranch that they had built together settled into the quiet of night, and in the distance, the desert stretched endlessly, full of possibilities and promise. The years continued to roll by, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. Daniel grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. He had his mother's talent with horses and his father's head for business, and by the time he was 15, he was managing entire aspects of the ranch operation on his own. Emma proved to be quieter than her brother, but equally capable, with a gift for understanding cattle behavior that Clara swore was almost supernatural. In 1895, Clara discovered she was pregnant for a third time. She was 34 years old now, and both she and Jackson had assumed their family was complete. The pregnancy was a surprise, but a welcome one, and this time both children were old enough to be excited about the prospect of a new sibling. Their second son was born in March of 1896, arriving during the first warm spell of spring. They named him Thomas after Clara's father, and from the moment he entered the world, he was a bundle of energy and mischief. Where Daniel had been a serious baby, and Emma had been placid and content, Thomas seemed determined to explore everything and get into every possible situation that might be even remotely dangerous. "This one is going to give us gray hair," Jackson said ruefully one afternoon after fishing 3-year-old Thomas out of the horse trough for the second time that week. Clara laughed as she dried off their youngest son. "He just has an adventurous spirit. He will settle down eventually. I hope so before he gives us both heart attacks." But despite his tendency toward chaos, Thomas brought immense joy to the family. Daniel and Emma doted on their baby brother, and the ranch hands competed to see who could make the toddler laugh the loudest. The Triple Crown was a place of happiness and prosperity, exactly what Jackson's father had envisioned when he first established the ranch decades earlier. As the new century approached, Jackson and Clara could look back on nearly 2 decades of marriage with pride and satisfaction. They had built not just a successful business, but a true partnership, one based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and deep, abiding love. The ranch now spanned twice as many acres as when Jackson had inherited it, with prize-winning cattle and horses that were sought after across the West. One evening in the fall of 1899, They hosted a celebration to mark the ranch's 60 years of operation. Neighbors from across the region attended, along with business associates and friends from as far away as Carson City and Reno. Daniel, now 17 and growing into a man, helped Jackson manage the guests, while Emma, at 12, assisted Clara in ensuring everyone was fed and comfortable. Thomas, now 3.5, ran wild with the children of the visiting families, his laughter ringing across the yard. During the party, one of the older ranchers pulled Jackson aside. "You have done your father proud, son. The Triple Crown is the finest operation in Nevada, maybe in all the West, and that wife of yours is remarkable. I will admit I had my doubts when I first heard you had hired a woman to do ranch work. Thought you had lost your mind, but Clara has proven every one of us wrong. She is as fine a rancher as any man I have known, and that is the honest truth." Jackson accepted the compliment with grace, though inside he felt a fierce surge of pride and protectiveness. "Clara has been my equal partner in everything. This ranch would not be what it is without her." "That is clear to everyone who has eyes to see." The old rancher clapped Jackson on the shoulder. "You are a lucky man, Jackson Oliver. I know it. Every single day I know it." Later that night, after all the guests had departed and the children were in bed, Jackson and Clara walked slowly around the ranch property. The moon was full, casting silver light across the landscape and making everything seem magical and unreal. They walked hand in hand, comfortable in the silence between them, until they reached the spot where Jackson had proposed 17 years earlier. "Do you remember what you said to me when you asked me to marry you?" Clara asked, her voice soft in the quiet night. "I remember every word. I said I wanted you by my side, not just as my employee, but as my equal in every way. And you have kept that promise every single day of our marriage." Clara stopped walking and turned to face him. "You have never once asked me to be less than I am. You have supported my dreams, celebrated my successes, and shared your life with me in the truest sense of the word. Do you know how rare that is? How precious?" Jackson cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently stroking her cheeks. "You make it easy. Loving you, respecting you, building this life with you has been the greatest privilege of my existence. We have had a good life, have we not?" There was something wistful in Clara's voice that made Jackson look at her more closely. "We have had an extraordinary life, and we are nowhere near finished living it. What brought this on?" Clara smiled, but there was a sheen of tears in her eyes. "Earlier today, watching our children and seeing everything we have built, I was just overwhelmed with gratitude. I kept thinking about that scared, desperate woman who rode onto this ranch 18 years ago, not knowing if you would even give her a chance. I kept thinking about how different my life would be if you had turned me away. And then I look at everything we have now, our family and our home and our love, and it feels almost like a dream. It is not a dream. It is real, and we built it together." Jackson pulled her close, holding her as though he could shield her from every bad thing the world might throw at them. "I am the one who should be grateful. Clara, you took a chance on me too. You could have found work anywhere once people saw how talented you were. But you stayed here. You built a life with me. You gave me children and partnership and a love I never thought I would find. There is nowhere else I would rather be." Clara's voice was muffled against his chest. "This ranch is my home. You are my home." They stood together under the moonlight, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting. Around them, the ranch was quiet, the cattle settled for the night, and the horses dozing in their stalls. In the distance, a coyote called out to the moon, and somewhere, an owl hooted softly. It was the sound of the West, wild and free and perfect. As the years turned into decades, Jackson and Clara grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They faced hardships, as all people do. There were droughts that tested their resources and their resolve. There were losses, including the death of Pete, who had been with the ranch for so many years. There were injuries and illnesses that reminded them of their mortality. But through everything, they faced each challenge hand in hand, drawing strength from their partnership and their unshakable faith in each other. Daniel married in 1905, bringing a kind, intelligent woman named Sarah to the ranch. She was a teacher from town who had no ranch experience but was eager to learn, and Clara took her under her wing with patience and enthusiasm. When Daniel and Sarah's first child was born in 1906, making Jackson and Clara grandparents, it felt like a new chapter in their ongoing story. Emma eventually married as well, choosing a rancher from a neighboring property, and Thomas, true to his adventurous nature, spent several years traveling the West before finally settling down and returning to help run the family ranch. In the spring of 1912, Jackson and Clara celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. Their children organized a party at the ranch, inviting friends and family from across the region. Jackson looked around at the gathered crowd, at his children and grandchildren, at the ranch that he and Clara had built into something truly special, and felt a profound sense of contentment. That evening, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Clara took Jackson's hand and led him outside to the porch where they had spent so many evenings together. She was 61 now, her auburn hair streaked with silver, her face marked by laugh lines and years of sun exposure. But to Jackson, she was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her break that mare. 30 years, Clara said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday that I rode onto this ranch, and sometimes it feels like you have been part of my life forever. Both of those things can be true. Jackson put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him with the ease of long practice. I cannot imagine my life without you in it. You are woven into every part of who I am. We have done well, have we not? The ranch is thriving. Our children are happy and healthy. We have grandchildren to spoil. We have had a good life together. The best life. Jackson kissed the top of her head. And we are not done yet. We have many more years ahead of us. Clara tilted her head back to look at him, and her eyes were bright with love and laughter. Many more years of working cattle and breaking horses and dealing with stubborn ranch hands. I would not have it any other way. Neither would I. They sat together as night fell around them, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. In the barns, horses stirred in their sleep. In the pastures, cattle grazed peacefully. And in the house behind them, their family slept safely under the roof that Jackson and Clara had provided through their hard work and dedication. Thank you, Clara said suddenly. For what? For seeing me. For valuing me. For building this life with me. For giving me 30 years of partnership and love and joy. For being exactly who you are. Jackson turned her face toward him and kissed her with all the tenderness and passion of 3 decades of marriage. Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who was smart enough to recognize something extraordinary when he saw it. Thank you for staying. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being you. As they held each other under the vast Nevada sky, both of them knew without words that this was what true love looked like. It was not just the grand gestures or the passionate moments, though those had their place. It was the everyday choice to stand together, to work together, to build together. It was respect and partnership and unwavering support. It was seeing each other truly and loving what you saw. The Triple Crown Ranch continued to prosper under their guidance, and as Jackson and Clara moved into their later years, they gradually turned over more and more of the day-to-day operations to their children. But they never stopped working entirely. Clara could still be found in the barns most mornings, talking softly to the horses she loved. Jackson still rode the property lines, checking fences and surveying his land with a proprietor's eye. They were a fixture on the ranch, the partnership that had built an empire, and the love story that had become legend in the region. In the summer of 1920, they celebrated their 40-year anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them. Their children had offered to host another party, but Jackson and Clara had declined, preferring to spend the evening alone together. They sat on the porch as the sun set, holding hands and reminiscing about their years together. Do you remember the day we met? Jackson asked. You broke that mare in 15 minutes, and I knew my life was about to change. I remember being terrified that you would not hire me, that I would have to keep searching for work and never find it. Clara squeezed his hand. And then you offered me the same pay as the men, and I knew I had found something special. Not just a job, but a place where I was valued for my abilities. I got the better end of that deal by far. Jackson brought her hand to his lips. The best decision I ever made was hiring you. The second best was asking you to marry me. The best decision I ever made was saying yes. Clara's voice was warm with affection and contentment. 40 years, Jackson. 40 years of working beside you, raising children with you, building dreams with you. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. So would I. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they sat together in comfortable silence. Two people who had built a life and a love that would endure long after they were gone. Their children would carry on the ranch, teaching their own children the values of hard work, fair dealing, and mutual respect that Jackson and Clara had modeled every day of their lives together. The story of the woman who could outwork any ranch hand and the cowboy who hired her at equal pay became legend in Oahe and beyond. People told it as an example of what was possible when prejudice was set aside and people were judged by their merit and character. Young women heard it and believed that they too could forge their own paths, could pursue work they loved regardless of what society expected. Young men heard it and learned that true partnership meant treating your spouse as an equal, valuing their contributions, and building dreams together. But for Jackson and Clara, it was simply their life. The extraordinary had become ordinary through the passage of years and the accumulation of shared experiences. The grand love story was made up of 10,000 small moments, shared glances across the breakfast table, hands brushing as they worked side by side, quiet conversations on the porch at day's end, comfort offered during difficult times, and joy celebrated during moments of triumph. In the fall of 1925, as they approached their 45th anniversary, Clara fell ill with pneumonia. The same disease that had killed her father now threatened her, and for several terrifying weeks, Jackson barely left her bedside. He held her hand through fever dreams, bathed her face with cool cloths, and prayed with a fervor he had not felt since his children were born. Their children gathered at the ranch, bringing the grandchildren to say goodbye in case the worst happened. But Clara, true to her nature, fought with every ounce of strength she possessed. Slowly, gradually, she began to recover. By the time winter arrived, she was back on her feet, though moving more slowly than before. Jackson hovered over her constantly, earning himself fond exasperation and gentle rebukes. I am not made of glass, she would tell him. I am still the same woman who could outwork any ranch hand on your property. You proved that by beating pneumonia, Jackson replied. But I am allowed to worry about you. It is my husbandly prerogative. And I love you for it, even when it drives me crazy. On a clear morning in the spring of 1926, Jackson found Clara in the barn with a mare that was about to foal. She looked up as he entered, and her smile was the same smile that had captivated him 44 years earlier. Come see this, Jackson. She is going to deliver soon, and it looks like it will be an easy birth. Jackson joined her at the stall, watching as the mare moved restlessly, preparing for the foal's arrival. Remember the first foal we delivered together? He asked. You knew exactly what to do, and I felt like I was just getting in your way. You were never in my way. We made a good team even then. Clara leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her waist. We still make a good team. The best team. They stood together watching the miracle of birth. Two people who had spent a lifetime working with animals and the land, who had built something lasting and meaningful through their partnership and love. The foal arrived without complications, a beautiful colt with strong legs and bright eyes. The mare licked him clean and nuzzled him to his feet, and within minutes he was nursing contentedly. Life continues, Clara said softly. Seasons change, children grow, and still life continues. It is beautiful, is it not? It is beautiful, Jackson agreed. Just like you, just like the life we have built together. Clara turned in his arms, looking up at him with eyes that still held all the intelligence, strength, and love that had first attracted him. I have no regrets, Jackson. Not a single one. Every choice I made led me to you, to this ranch, to our children and grandchildren. I would not change a single moment. Neither would I. Jackson held her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Clara Oliver. You took a risk by coming here, and I took a risk by hiring you. But it was the best risk either of us ever took. To risks taken and dreams realized, Clara said with a smile. To risks taken and dreams realized, Jackson echoed. And to 44 more years together. Clara laughed, the sound as bright and joyful as it had been when she was 21. At least 44 more. We have to stick around long enough to meet great-grandchildren. Deal! They sealed the promise with a kiss, there in the barn with hay dust dancing in the sunlight and the smell of horses all around them. It was perfectly imperfect, utterly ordinary, and absolutely magical, just like their life together had always been. The years rolled on, bringing the inevitable changes that time brings to all people. Jackson and Clara grew frailer, their bodies betraying them even as their minds remained sharp and their love remained constant. They moved more slowly, worked fewer hours, and spent more time in rocking chairs on the porch, watching the ranch that was now run primarily by their children and grandchildren. But they never lost the essence of who they were. Clara still visited the horses every day, and Jackson still reviewed the ranch accounts every evening. They still held hands whenever they walked together, still kissed goodnight before falling asleep, still looked at each other with eyes full of love and respect and deep, abiding affection. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1932, their children organized a massive celebration despite Jackson and Clara's protests that they did not need a fuss. The ranch was filled with family and friends, with people who had known them for decades, and younger folks who had only heard the stories but wanted to pay their respects to a couple whose love had become legendary. Jackson stood to make a toast, his hand shaking slightly but his voice still strong. 50 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known. She was the hardest worker on my ranch, the smartest partner in my business, and the best wife a man could ask for. She gave me children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She gave me a life full of meaning and purpose and joy. Clara Vance Oliver, you are the love of my life, and I am grateful for every single day we have spent together. Clara stood as well, though it took her a moment to rise from her chair. When she spoke, her voice still carried the strength and determination that had characterized her entire life. Jackson Oliver, you gave me something I had stopped believing I would ever find. You gave me a chance to prove myself, a place to call home, and a love that has sustained me through every joy and every sorrow. You treated me as your equal from the very beginning, and you have never wavered in that commitment. You are the finest man I have ever known, and I am proud to have spent 50 years as your wife. Here is to 50 more. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and Jackson kissed his wife to the delight of all assembled. It was a perfect moment, the culmination of a life well lived and a love story for the ages. As the sun set that evening and the party wound down, Jackson and Clara retreated to their favorite spot on the porch. They sat in their rocking chairs, holding hands across the space between them, and watched as their family laughed and talked in the yard below. Their oldest grandson had taken over primary management of the ranch now, running it with the same values of hard work and fair dealing that his grandparents had instilled. The Triple Crown was in good hands, and the legacy Jackson and Clara had built would continue for generations to come. We did well, Clara said, her voice soft with satisfaction. We did better than well. We built something beautiful. Jackson squeezed her hand. I love you, Clara. I have loved you for 50 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. I love you too, Jackson, always and forever. They sat together as darkness fell, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. They had faced every challenge together, celebrated every triumph together, and loved each other with a devotion that never wavered. Their story was one of partnership and respect, of seeing past societal expectations to recognize true worth, of building dreams side by side. The woman who could outwork any ranch hand had found the cowboy who valued her skills enough to pay her fairly. Together, they had built an empire, raised a family, and created a love story that would be told for generations. And as the stars emerged in the vast Nevada sky, they held hands and knew that their lives had been full of exactly the things that mattered most: love, partnership, purpose, and each other. In the years that followed, Jackson and Clara continued to live on the ranch they loved, surrounded by the family they had created and the legacy they had built. They passed peacefully within months of each other in 1935, both having lived full, meaningful lives. At Jackson's funeral, their children spoke of his fairness and integrity. At Clara's funeral, they spoke of her strength and determination and the barriers she had broken simply by being excellent at what she did. But mostly, people spoke of their love, the way they had looked at each other even after more than 50 years of marriage, the way they had supported each other through every challenge, the way they had built something lasting and beautiful through partnership and mutual respect. Their story became legend, passed down through generations as an example of what love could be when it was based on equality, respect, and genuine partnership. The Triple Crown Ranch continued to prosper under the guidance of their descendants, and the values that Jackson and Clara had established remained the foundation of its operation. Fair wages, hard work, and judging people by their abilities rather than arbitrary characteristics became the ranch's hallmarks, just as they had been since that day in 1882 when a desperate young woman rode onto the property and a smart young rancher gave her a chance. And on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the family gathered on the porch of the main house, someone would inevitably tell the story of Jackson and Clara, the woman who could outwork any ranch hand and the cowboy who hired her at equal pay, who saw past what society said she should be and recognized what she could do, who fell in love while building dreams together, who proved that true partnership, built on mutual respect and unwavering support, could create something that would last long after they were gone. It was a story of the Wild West, but more than that, it was a story of love in its truest, purest form. And it was a story that would never be forgotten, passed down through generations as proof that when two people come together as true equals, when they build their lives on respect and partnership and deep, abiding love, they can create something that will endure forever. The Triple Crown Ranch stood as testament to their legacy, but more than that, the family they had created and the love they had shared continued to ripple outward, touching lives and inspiring hearts long after they had gone. Their great-grandchildren would sit on the same porch where Jackson and Clara had spent so many evenings, and they would hold the hands of their own partners, building their own dreams and creating their own stories. And always, they would remember the foundation that had been laid for them by a remarkable woman who refused to let society define her limitations, and a wise man who recognized that true worth has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with character, skill, and heart. The story of Jackson and Clara Oliver was complete, their lives fully lived and their love fully realized. They had started as employer and employee, become partners and spouses, raised a family, built an empire, and created a legacy that would endure for generations. They had loved deeply, worked hard, treated people fairly, and lived with integrity every single day of their lives. And in the end, they had proved that the greatest adventure is building a life with someone you respect and admire, someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you all the more for it. Under the vast Nevada sky, the Triple Crown Ranch continued its operations, Season after season, year after year, cattle grazed in the pastures, horses ran free in the corrals, and new generations learned the lessons that Jackson and Clara had taught through their example. The land endured, the family prospered, and the love story lived on, immortal and inspiring, a testament to what two people could build when they came together as true equals and partners in every sense of the word.